Once again we were all on our own. We moved back to our favourite mooring in the Wide and walked over to nearby Shrubber Hall, home of the Earl of Lichfield. The gardens were really beautiful. The hall was okay, but mainly informal photographs of royalty taken by the Earl. The next day we were going to go back to watch As You Like It in the grounds, but it looked like it was going to rain, so we stayed on the boat painting our canalware. In the evening we went to the Lock House for a roast beef and turkey dinner. Sunday the 18th of July. We were up early and after breakfast continued painting the Buckbeacon and Flatiron. At 11 o'clock we were off to the goose fair at the Earl's farm. The weather was nice all day and we had a really good time chatting with the people all dressed up in period clothing. The kitchen maids cooked on the open fire and the dairy maids made butter and cheese. We bought both butter and cheese. They had a bailiff, an auctioneer, a moneylender, cloggers dancing and lots of market stalls. It was all done very well by people who were obviously enjoying what they were doing. There was also some relatively newer farm equipment to check out. And there was a Punch and Judy show for all us kiddies. We finally made it back to the boat around 3 o'clock and just sat on the deck feeding the ducks and chatting with fellow boaters. We pulled ourselves away from Tixall Wide at 9 a.m. on Monday and cruised all day to Erewash. It was a dull day, so we didn't see the scenic Cannock Chase countryside at its best. We walked into the village for fish and chips. A very pretty village with a number of wood-framed houses and some of them with thatched roofs. We almost decided to stay put the next day as it was pouring with rain. However, we painted until around 11 o'clock and then cruised along to Stenson. We stopped for a pint on the way and I bought a chamber pot that just had to become another part of our canalware collection that needed some artistic attention. After leaving Stenson we were back to Double Locks. It was another day with no sunshine, but the rain held off as we made our way to Shardlow. Here there were quite a few old canal warehouses that had been renovated into restaurants and houses. We walked around the marina for a while and then went to the navigation for dinner. A mile and a half after leaving Shardlow, we left the Trent and Mersey Canal and started cruising the River Trent. Claire Justine's swimline was designed for the northern rivers and she handled the deeper waters well. After 2 miles on the river, we took a left turn at Trent Junction onto the Erewash Canal. Lots of houseboats to begin with, and then very weedy and double locks with stiff paddles and heavy gates, and kids spitting from the bridges. Obviously not one of our favourites. We moored up at Eastwood Lock and in the morning cruised half a mile to the canal's terminus at Llangley Mill, where I got my certificate for being brave enough to cruise the Erewash. I guess not many boaters do it. We decided that this was not the canal that we wanted our next guest to have as a first impression of Britain's waterways, so we made a hasty retreat. We did meet another boat while on the Erewash. It was in a lock and there was no evidence it was going to move. Finally a man popped his head out and said he was sorry. He was having a shower and he wasn't expecting another boat. Also a foul-mouthed teenager cast his fishing line over the boat, and he wasn't very happy when I pulled the line and yanked his pole into the canal. To be fair, there were some stretches of the canal that were rural, like this farm and church on the hillside. Here we are approaching Trent Junction and the end of our Erewash cruise. The Erewash did end up at the bottom of our list of canals that we would recommend. Now straight ahead of us is the Sour Navigation, and that's where we're heading. It started to pelt down and hail on us as soon as we got onto the River Sour. It was so bad we had to pull over and take shelter. After the downpour, it turned into a nice day as we made our way down the navigation to Zeus. Much nicer scenery than yesterday. We had dinner at the riverside pub, the Rose and Crown. You do have to watch out for those weirs and navigations like this one at Zeus. We were up bright and early on the 24th of July and on our way to Loughborough to meet our next guests. On the way we passed St James's Church in the pretty village of Normanton-on-Stour. We arrived in Loughborough in plenty of time, so I decided to do an oil change. But it did take a little longer than I expected. Pat took off for the railway station, not knowing what our guests, Dick and Lorna Kiefer from Utah, looked like. But she had no problems identifying them, and when the three of them got back to the boat, I was just finishing up the oil change. Dick was a work colleague of mine, and she'd never met him, and neither of us had met Lorna. After they got settled in, we had a beer at the boat inn, and then cruised back to Zeus, where we had dinner at the Rose and Crown. We moored for the night in open country. We left Zeus and returned to the boat inn in Loughborough for Sunday dinner. Very friendly landlord, great atmosphere, and an excellent meal. Raining off and on during the afternoon cruise down to the nice little village of Montsorrel, and that's where we moored up across from the weir. We had an evening drink at the waterside inn by the lock. We were getting low on food, so headed for Leicester in very windy conditions. Dick handled the boat well. Leicester is where the Stour navigation ends and the Leicester section of the Grand Union begins. However, we didn't stop in Leicester and went on to Aylstone. As there was no traffic on the canal, we tied off for the night at King's Lock. I think it was on Tuesday that we restocked our provisions at South Wigston. The pounds were very low in this section of the canal, and at one of the locks a woman came in way too fast and hit us hard. We didn't go through any more locks with her. We met a few boats today, including this British Waterways dredging barge. After going through 17 locks in windy weather, we called it quits for the day and moored up just before Saddington Tunnel. Tuesday was a gorgeous day. In fact, it was a short stay. Dick has taken us through the 880-yard-long Saddington Tunnel on our way to Market Harbour. The tunnel was built in 1797 and it has a nasty bend in it. It's also home to lots of bats, but that didn't seem to worry Pat and Lorna. Here's Pat taking us through the bridge that was built in her honour. A few yards past here we made a left turn at Foxton and on to the 5 3/4 mile long Market Harbour Arm. We moored cattywampus across from a disused timber yard at the terminus. In the evening we walked into town and ate dinner at the Three Swans Hotel. Guess what? It was pouring with rain as we pulled away from our mooring and headed back down the arm to Foxton. We turned left at the junction and started ascending the 10 locks of the well-maintained Foxton Flight. These locks have an interesting feature. They are side ponds that conserve water. There were quite a few gongoozlers watching us as we made our way up to the top lock. It took us 45 minutes to do the flight, and Pat lost the bet on how long it would take us. She had to walk back down to the junction to buy us ice creams. We continued along the Grand Union for another 8 miles and then turned onto the 1.5 mile long Welford Arm. Welford will become our home for the next couple of days. Well, it looks like we have another visitor. For some reason we didn't take any photos while at Welford, but here's a quick rundown of what happened. On Thursday, just as we were mooring up, Dick became the first of our guests to take a dip in the cut. Luckily he didn't hurt himself and he managed to retrieve his glasses. After he dried out and took another shower, we went over to the wharf for dinner. Friday was a nice hot day and we just relaxed and walked around the village. We popped into the Shoulder of Mutton for a lunchtime pint and returned in the evening for dinner. On Saturday it was time to say goodbye to Dick and Lorna. The four of us, plus lots of laundry, took a taxi into Market Harborough. They caught the train and we found a laundromat. I went to get some cash at the ATM and it kept my card, and there was no way I could get it back until Monday. So for the rest of Saturday and all of Sunday we worked really hard cleaning and painting the boat. But by Monday it was ready for our next guests. Oh yes, I did go back to Market Harborough to get my card and get some cash. From the 9th of July to the 3rd of August we cruised 180 miles and went through 151 locks. To date we've covered 780 miles and been through 573 locks.